For over 3 years, the hip-hop world has been waiting for justice for Takeoff, the Migos rapper who was shot and killed as an innocent bystander outside a Houston bowling alley, taken too soon at just 28 years old.
New details in the killing of rapper and Metro Atlanta native Takeoff. The man accused of killing one of the members of Migos has been indicted on murder charges.
His accused killer, Patrick Xavier Clark, has been out on $1 million bond since January 2023, walking free, living under nothing more than a curfew. But now new footage of Clark getting violently beaten on camera has gone viral, with the internet calling it straight-up revenge.
However, people are saying, man, don't let the smile and everybody saying that, oh, he's innocent, make you feel or fall into the trap to say he's just not that guy.
Out on bond for murder, caught another body in 2018, tried to flee to Mexico before his arrest, and now getting jumped on camera? Something about this entire situation is deeply wrong, and we're about to break all of it down. Right now, as you are watching this very video, footage of Patrick Xavier Clark, the man accused of murdering Migos rapper Takeoff, getting absolutely pummeled, beaten down, and humiliated on camera, is spreading across every single corner of the internet like wildfire. The clip, which surfaced and immediately went viral across X, Instagram, and TikTok, shows the 36-year-old Houston DJ known as DJ Pat on the receiving end of a vicious, unrelenting physical confrontation. A confrontation that countless people on social media are already calling street justice, karma, and flat-out revenge for what happened to Kirsnick Kari Ball on the night of November 1st, 2022.
Check it out now. Holy. Now we got some more information on Mr. DJ Pat out of Houston, okay? Now, he's a very popular DJ out of Houston.
And let us be absolutely, unequivocally clear about something before we go any further. This is not just some random altercation. This is not just some bar fight that happened to get caught on somebody's cell phone camera. No. The reason this footage has detonated across the internet, the reason it has racked up millions upon millions of views in a matter of hours, is because the man getting hit, Patrick Xavier Clark, is the same man who is currently out on a $1 million bond, walking free on the streets of Houston, living under nothing more than a curfew, awaiting trial for the murder of one of the most beloved, most talented, and most tragically underappreciated rappers of our entire generation. A man who, as far as the state of Texas is concerned, put 2 bullets into an innocent bystander and then tried to flee the country.
New details in the killing of rapper and Metro Atlanta native Takeoff. The man accused of killing one of the members of Migos has been indicted on murder charges.
Now, before we unpack every single layer of this story, the footage, the fallout, the legal chaos, and everything in between, you need to understand the full picture. You need to understand exactly who Patrick Xavier Clark is, what he has been doing since his release, and why the hip-hop community, Takeoff's family, and frankly, millions of fans around the entire world are absolutely seething with frustration, anger, and outright disbelief at what they are witnessing unfold in real time. Because here is the thing that makes this entire situation so deeply, profoundly infuriating. Patrick Clark has been out of jail since January 4th, 2023. That is right, the man accused of firing the bullets that killed Takeoff, an innocent bystander, a man who was not even involved in the argument, a man who was simply standing there at a private party minding his own business, has been walking free for over 3 years now. 3 full years. An anonymous, concerned citizen posted his $1 million bond. And just like that, Patrick Clark walked out of a Harris County jail, strapped on a GPS ankle monitor, and went home to sleep in his own bed, as though nothing had happened.
However, people are saying, man, don't let the smile and everybody saying that, oh, he's innocent, make you feel or fall into the trap to say he's just not that guy.
And the conditions of his release. Initially, he was placed on house arrest with that GPS monitor and a curfew running from 7 in the evening to 7 in the morning. But by November 2023, barely a year after Takeoff was laid to rest at an emotional memorial service inside State Farm Arena in Atlanta, those restrictions were eased even further. The GPS ankle monitor was removed entirely, gone, disappeared, All that remained was a curfew that, based on this newly surfaced footage of Clark out and about getting into physical altercations on the streets, seems to function more as a polite suggestion than an actual legal restraint on a man facing a first-degree murder charge. So, when that footage of him getting beaten began circulating online, you can imagine, you can absolutely picture, the reaction from every corner of the internet. People were not simply surprised, they were enraged, they were disgusted, they were beside themselves. The comment sections, the quote tweets, the Instagram stories, the TikTok stitches, all of them flooded with the same sentiment, the same burning, desperate question that has haunted this case since the very beginning. How is this man still walking free? How is it possible that the individual who law enforcement has identified, arrested, charged, and had indicted by a grand jury for the murder of Takeoff is out here getting into street fights while Takeoff's mother is still mourning her son?
Police arrested Patrick Clark in December, a month after the shooting that happened outside a private party in Houston, Texas.
And that question takes on an even heavier, more gut-wrenching weight when you remember the actual circumstances of Takeoff's death. Because let us walk through what happened on that fateful night in downtown Houston. On November 1st, 2022, at approximately 2:34 in the morning, outside 810 Billiards and Bowling on San Jacinto Street, a private after-party was winding down. Takeoff was there with his uncle and fellow Migos member, Quavo. There had been a high-stakes dice game going on throughout the night. Takeoff, critically and importantly, was not playing. He was not gambling. He was not in any argument. He was not beefing with a single soul in that building. He was simply there, present, peaceful, minding his own business, and completely uninvolved in whatever dispute was brewing among other people in that crowd. But then an argument broke out. Voices got louder, tempers flared. The dispute, which reportedly involved Quavo and another individual named Cameron Joshua, escalated from words to shoves, from shoves to absolute pandemonium. And then, in the span of just a few terrifying seconds that would change the course of hip-hop history forever, multiple people drew firearms. Surveillance footage captured it all. The panic, the scramble, the flashes of gunfire cutting through the Houston night. Shell casings from at least 3 different guns were recovered at the scene. More than 40 rounds were exchanged in total. And when the smoke cleared, Takeoff, Kirsnick Kari Ball, 28 years old, was lying on the ground with gunshot wounds to the head and torso. He was pronounced dead at the scene. 2 other people were injured, but survived. Takeoff was not as fortunate. Investigators spent the next 31 painstaking days combing through every available frame of surveillance video, cell phone footage from witnesses, and ballistics reports. Houston PD's Homicide Division and their Gang Division worked around the clock, reviewing hours upon hours of footage from multiple angles inside and outside the bowling alley. The breakthrough came when forensic analysts matched Clark's fingerprints to a wine bottle recovered at the scene. A wine bottle that, according to the surveillance footage, Clark was holding in one hand while allegedly firing a gun with the other. Ballistics reconstruction then linked the trajectory of the fatal bullets directly to Clark's position during the shooting. HPD Chief Troy Finner held a press conference announcing Clark's arrest and emphasizing that the department had made a promise to Takeoff's family to bring justice. On December 1st, 2022, Houston PD arrested Patrick Xavier Clark peacefully. But here is the detail that tells you everything about his mindset. At the time of his arrest, investigators discovered he had obtained an expedited U.S. passport, booked a flight to Mexico, and had a large amount of cash on hand. He was not planning to stick around. He was planning to disappear.
He was finna go to Mexico, okay? Homie was gonna be in Cancun, okay? Tulum, all right?
Now, if you thought the story of Patrick Xavier Clark and the fatal shooting of Takeoff was disturbing enough on its own, what you are about to hear is going to shake you to your absolute core, because the November 2022 shooting outside that Houston bowling alley, that was not the first time Patrick Clark was connected to a killing, not by a long shot. According to reports that surfaced during background investigations following his 2022 arrest, Clark was previously investigated in connection with a fatal shooting that occurred at a nightclub on North Shepherd Drive in Houston, all the way back in February of 2018. That is right, 4 full years before Takeoff's murder. Patrick Clark was already linked to another dead body, another life taken, another family left shattered and grieving and wondering how any of this could have happened.
Apparently in 2018, he caught a body out at a club, and the stories about it is varying, okay? Now, some people say someone was trying to rob him and he killed the guy, okay?
Now, the details surrounding that 2018 incident are, to put it mildly, murky, contested, and deeply complicated. There are multiple versions of the story that have circulated over the years, and depending on who you ask, the circumstances change rather dramatically. One version of events suggests that someone attempted to rob Clark at the nightclub, and in the ensuing confrontation, Clark shot and killed the would-be robber. According to this telling, Clark then fled the scene, a pattern of behavior that, as we have already established, seems to be somewhat of a recurring habitual theme in his life, but later returned to authorities and turned himself in voluntarily. The investigation that followed included a review of surveillance footage, witness interviews, and eventually a presentation of the evidence to a Harris County grand jury. But there is another version of the story, one that paints a slightly different but equally chaotic picture. In this account, a man who had been pepper sprayed by a security guard at the venue went to his vehicle, retrieved a firearm, and opened fire on both Clark and a security guard. Clark, in this version of events, returned fire in what he would characterize as an act of pure self-preservation and killed the attacker in the process.
Now, some people say, nah, that's not how it went. Some people say what happened is that a guy who was pepper sprayed by a security guard, he went to his vehicle, okay?
Either way, whether it was a robbery gone wrong or a retaliatory shooting by a disgruntled patron, the end result was identical. Someone died, and Patrick Clark was the one who pulled the trigger. The grand jury ultimately declined to indict Clark, determining that the evidence pointed towards self-defense. No formal charges were ever filed. No trial ever took place. And Patrick Clark walked away from that incident with his record technically, legally, spotlessly clean. No conviction, no blemish. Nothing that would show up on a standard background check.
Hit him up. He came back in, turned himself in. They did a whole investigation. They even went to a grand jury with it, but they basically said it's pretty much self-defense.
Until, of course, Takeoff was killed. And suddenly, that 2018 incident took on a whole new dimension, a whole new significance, a whole new chilling context. Because what it demonstrated to anyone paying close enough attention is that Patrick Xavier Clark was no stranger to lethal violence. This was not a man who had never held a gun before. This was not a man unfamiliar with the weight of a trigger pull. This was a man who had already, by the age of 30, been directly responsible for ending another human being's life, and walked away from it without a single consequence. And yet, and this is where the frustration really boils over into outright rage, Clark's lack of prior convictions was actually used as a point in his favor during bail hearings for the Takeoff case. That is correct. His defense attorneys argued that because he had no criminal convictions, because the 2018 killing never resulted in charges, he was not a danger to the community. They used his technically clean record to get his bond reduced from $2 million down to $1 million. They used it to paint him as a peaceful, business-minded DJ who just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, twice, with a gun in his hand, both times resulting in someone dying. His friends publicly backed this characterization. Houston rapper Jamali described him as not the type of person involved in violence, calling him about business, not violence, and quiet. An anonymous friend went even further, telling media outlets that Clark was being framed, insisting he is very nice and thoughtful and does not get mad or hostile. These are the character assessments that helped a man accused of murdering one of hip-hop's biggest stars walk out of jail and sleep in his own bed.
Now, this is going to get into a lot of legalities into the case because, yes, his bullet probably was the bullet that killed Takeoff, but maybe he was shooting at someone else.
But prosecutors are not buying it. Not for a single second. The Houston Police Department and the Harris County District Attorney's Office have staked their entire case on the position that Clark was the aggressor, that his bullets, both of them, are the ones that struck and killed Takeoff, and that the forensic evidence, the ballistics reconstruction, the surveillance footage, and the fingerprints on that wine bottle all point in one direction and one direction only: guilty. A Harris County grand jury agreed, indicting Clark on murder charges in May of 2023. The indictment was not ambiguous. It was a formal, legal declaration that there is sufficient evidence to put Patrick Xavier Clark on trial for the murder of Kersnick Kari Ball. His attorney, Letitia Canonis-Hollins, has been unequivocal in her assertion that Clark did not shoot Takeoff, and that he fired only after others initiated gunfire. The defense's position is that Clark was reacting to an immediate threat in a chaotic, war zone-like environment where multiple people were shooting simultaneously, and that his actions constituted a valid exercise of self-defense under Texas law. Self-defense, the exact same argument that got him off in 2018. The exact same playbook, dusted off and deployed once again 4 years later with another body on the ground. And that brings us to perhaps the most maddening part of this entire saga: the timeline. As of February 2026, the trial has not happened. The case has been stuck in an endless loop of pretrial motions, evidence disputes, expert consultations, and court scheduling conflicts. In November 2025, Clark's defense team was even granted court funds to hire a visualization analyst to review the evidence. Yet another expert, yet another delay. A forensic review in 2024 uncovered issues with evidence handling, prompting a Brady notice, though it did not ultimately derail the prosecution.
Mr. Clark, please stand.
This is Patrick Clark. He's charged in the death of Migos rapper Takeoff. He was back in court today for what was supposed to be a pre-trial hearing.
The trial is currently scheduled to begin on November 9th, 2026, with jury selection starting November 5th. Which means it will be almost exactly 4 years from the date Takeoff was killed before a jury even gets to hear the evidence. 4 years, 1,460 days of Clark living his life on bond, while Takeoff's family and millions of fans wait for something that even remotely resembles accountability. No plea deals have been offered or discussed. The prosecution wants the murder charge to stand. The defense wants it dismissed entirely. And the wheels of justice, as they say, grind on, slowly, painfully, and for many, unbearably. But beyond the courtroom drama, beyond the legal briefs and the bond hearings and the forensic reports and the pretrial motions that seem to stretch on into infinity, there is a grief at the center of this story that no amount of legal proceedings could ever truly address. There is a wound that runs so deep, so profoundly through the very heart of the hip-hop community, that even now, more than 3 years after Takeoff was taken from this world, it has not even begun to heal, and nobody carries that wound more visibly, more painfully, more publicly than the two men who knew Takeoff better than anyone else alive, Quavo and Offset. Quavo, Takeoff's uncle, his mentor, his bandmate from the very beginning, the man who was standing just feet away when those shots rang out, has been devastatingly, heartbreakingly open about the toll this has taken on every fiber of his being. In a July 2023 YouTube interview titled "A Conversation for the Fans," Quavo let the world into the darkest, most painful corners of his grief, admitting, "I think about him all the time. Sometimes I cry myself to sleep, and that's it. I just know he's here. If I can't feel him, I just know he's around." Those words, raw, unfiltered, trembling with emotion, coming from a man whose entire public persona is built on confidence and swagger and bravado, hit like a freight train. Here is one of the biggest rappers in the world, a man who has sold millions of records and performed on the grandest stages imaginable, telling the entire world that he cries himself to sleep at night because his nephew was shot and killed right in front of him, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. Quavo has since dedicated his album Rocket Power entirely to Takeoff's memory, explaining it as a way to honor the motivational spirit that Takeoff brought to everything he touched. On the 1-year anniversary of Takeoff's death, Quavo posted on Instagram, "Can't forget it, won't forget it, never forget it, I remember." And on the 3-year mark, in November of 2025, the message was simpler, quieter, but no less devastating. "Miss you, Takeoff."
Could never be the same without my boys, because he was the glue. You know, in a group, you got egos, man.
But Quavo has done more than grieve in private. He has transformed his agony into action, channeling his loss into a mission that extends far beyond the recording studio and the concert stage. In September of 2023, he spoke at a gun violence prevention event alongside U.S. politicians, declaring,
"I feel like your calling comes at the least expected times. You don't think nothing is gonna happen. I need to step up to the plate and hit a home run."
He founded the Rocket Foundation in Takeoff's honor, dedicated to supporting anti-violence initiatives in communities across the country. He performed a heart-wrenching tribute at the 2023 BET Awards alongside Offset, transforming a rocket graphic into Takeoff's image as the crowd stood in reverent, tearful silence. At the 2023 Grammys, Quavo performed Without You, a tribute so emotionally charged that it left audience members openly weeping. Even amidst reported tensions between Quavo and Offset backstage at that very ceremony, the two men found a way to stand together to honor the person who had always been their bridge, their mediator, their center of gravity. And then there is Offset, Takeoff's cousin, the Migos member who was not there that night, the one who has lived every single day since November 1st, 2022, asking himself,
What if? What if he had been there? What if he could have read the room, could have sensed the danger, could have been the one to say, "This ain't the play. We need to get out of here."
When Offset first broke his silence on November 15th, 2022, his Instagram statement was drenched in anguish.
"The pain of losing my brother is unbearable. Take changed music and culture forever in just a decade and a half of life."
At Takeoff's memorial service at State Farm Arena, he fought through tears, telling the crowd that Takeoff changed the music. A month later, in December 2022, Offset posted that he was in a dark place, a raw, unvarnished glimpse into the abyss of grief that had swallowed him whole. Then came the interview that changed everything, the one where Offset finally said out loud what had been eating him alive for years.
Got millions of dollars in egos, but homie would humble that at all times. He might go group text.
Offset admitted what many had long suspected, that he carries a crushing, suffocating burden of responsibility for the fractures within the group that preceded that fateful night. He described Takeoff as the glue that held Migos together, the quiet, steady, humble presence who would send that group text saying, "What we doing?" whenever egos and outside influences threatened to tear them apart. The man who reminded them that they were doing it for their families, that God put them in their positions, and that nothing else, not the solo deals, not the outside voices, not the industry politics, mattered more than their bond.
What if I just thugged it out with the business not being right? You know what I mean? Maybe we wouldn't even been right there or in that place.
On the question of his relationship with Quavo after the tragedy, Offset W., the devastation in those words is immeasurable.
I love Quavo. I think it's just better for us to be on our own different things. Now, we could come back to some maybe a couple years from now, maybe.
This is not a man talking about creative differences or record label disputes. This is a man talking about the collapse of a brotherhood that was forged in childhood and shattered by a bullet fired from a gun, held by a man who is, as of this very moment, still free. And so here we are. February 2026. The footage of Patrick Clark getting beaten has gone viral, and the internet is calling it karma. The trial is set for November 9th, 2026, with jury selection beginning November 5th. The trial is expected to last 2 to 3 weeks. Clark remains free on bond, maintaining his innocence through his attorney. No plea deals are on the table. The prosecution wants the full murder charge. The defense wants total dismissal. If convicted of first-degree murder under Texas law, Clark faces anywhere from 5 to 99 years in prison or life imprisonment, plus a fine of up to $10,000. There is no death penalty. This is not a capital murder charge. But even a mid-range sentence would mean that Clark, now 36, would spend the defining decades of his life behind bars. Parole eligibility would come after serving half his sentence or 30 years, whichever is less. And throughout the entire process, Takeoff's family could pursue a wrongful death lawsuit, seeking financial damages for an incalculable loss. But it is worth pausing, truly stopping and sitting with the fact that in his final public interview, recorded just days before his death on the Drink Champs podcast, Takeoff spoke about wanting recognition, wanting his flowers while he was still here, not posthumously, not in a tribute montage, while he was still breathing, and then, days later, he was gone. The viral footage of Patrick Clark getting beaten may have given some people a momentary, fleeting sense of satisfaction, a feeling that the universe was delivering a taste of accountability the courts have failed to provide. But real justice, the kind that matters, the kind that actually means something for Takeoff's mother, for Quavo who still cries himself to sleep, for Offset who still blames himself, for every fan who has ever screamed Migos from the crowd, that justice can only come from a courtroom, and it is still 9 months away. Because Takeoff deserved better, and everybody, every single person watching this video right now, knows it.